When you hear about murders involving spouses or ex-spouses, it's usually the husband, the wife, or a lover who's been killed. Today's case is similar but takes a bit of a different turn than you might expect. Let's talk about Tracey Richter. Tracey Ann Richter was born around 1966 and raised in Chicago. She was very smart and a good student with high test scores and, more than likely, a promising future. In 1988, Tracey married John Pittman III, a plastic surgeon she'd met in med school. About a year later, the couple welcomed their only child, a son named Bert. But the marriage went sour quickly. John would later claim that Tracey initially seemed to be interested in all the same things he was, but later on seemed unusually enthusiastic about them. I think the implication here from him is that she was pretending to have things in common with him as a manipulation tactic. John, a huge animal lover, claimed Tracey said she loved animals as well, but later on neglected and even threatened his pets. There were also allegations of physical abuse on both sides. John eventually hired a private investigator who gave him photographic evidence that Tracey was having numerous affairs. John also suspected Tracey of stealing his parents' credit cards and racking up tens of thousands of dollars worth of charges on them. She adamantly denied this when she was confronted, and no charges were ever filed. At some point toward the end of their marriage, Tracey pulled a gun on John and threatened to kill him. After this incident, she agreed to undergo 6 months of psychological counseling. Tracey and John divorced after just 4 years of marriage. During the divorce proceedings, Tracey alleged that John had sexually abused their son, Bert. John denied this, and when the divorce was finalized in 1996, a judge ruled that there was no evidence of it. Their custody battle continued to rage, but Tracey moved on. In 1996, the same year her divorce with John was finalized, she began dating a man named Michael Roberts, who she had met online. Later on that year, she went to visit Michael in his native Australia, and just 18 days after meeting in person, they were married. After marrying, the couple moved to the small town of Early, Iowa. Just a few months after getting married, Michael found out his new wife was cheating on him, but he decided to stay with her because he didn't want to become another statistic. The couple would go on to have 2 children, a son Noah in 1998 and daughter Mason in 2000. They also started a business together that sold information technology training courses. While living in Iowa, Michael and Tracey, to an extent, befriended their young neighbor, Dustin Wehde. Dustin has been described as shy and having few friends, never having been invited to birthday parties or sleepovers as a child. But while quiet around strangers, he was said to be friendly around people he did know. He was also very smart and loved computers, video games, and golf. The couple, especially Michael, took Dustin under their wing. Dustin went to church with them, they played paintball together, and he even mowed their lawn. Things seemed to be going pretty well for everyone involved, but that wouldn't last. By 2001, Tracey's custody battle with her ex-husband John Pittman had reached a boiling point, with Tracey once again alleging John had abused their son Bert. But her marriage to Michael wasn't going so well either. One of their arguments got physical, and Michael was arrested. He would later claim Tracey was smashing holes in the floor and he was protecting her because she was about to get electrocuted. Michael also told police Tracey had tried to kill him at least twice. A few days before one of these attempts, she even took out a life insurance policy on him. But his claims largely went ignored. I believe charges were filed but later dismissed. On the evening of December 13th, 2001, 35-year-old Tracey was at home with her 3 children. Michael was out of town on a business trip. Tracey had a friend over that evening who left around 5:15 p.m. Later that night, she was giving 1-year-old Mason a bath when, as she claimed, 2 intruders broke in. One of the intruders was their neighbor, 20-year-old Dustin Wehde. According to Tracey, Dustin and the unknown man barged through their unlocked door. One of the men strangled her with a pair of pantyhose and she blacked out. She woke up to 11-year-old Bert screaming. Her glasses had been knocked off during the attack, so she couldn't see as well as she usually could. But she managed to run to the master bedroom and grab a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Dustin attacked her, tugging at her hair and feet, but she managed to pull the trigger. The safety was on, so she unlocked it and fired. When that gun was emptied, she grabbed a revolver and shot him several more times. That's when he fell to the floor, unmoving. The second unidentified man ran away and Bert called 911. A couple who lived in the Richter's neighborhood were both EMTs, and their pagers went off at some point after the attack. By the time they arrived at the Roberts' house, sheriff's deputies were already there. When the EMTs saw Dustin's body, they knew he was past the point of saving. He died on the scene. He'd been shot 9 times from 2 separate guns. After the attack, Tracey and her children were taken to a hospital. Tracey had a bruised neck, which to hospital staff seemed consistent with strangulation. She also had wounds on her hands that appeared to be from fighting off attackers. After the story got out, Tracey was hailed as a hero for protecting herself and her children, and Dustin's death was assumed to be in self-defense. In 2002, Tracey and Michael appeared on the Montel Williams show to discuss the attack. During the interview, Tracey claimed, "I did what I had to do to protect my family." The year after the shooting, Dustin's parents divorced. On Thanksgiving Day, 2002, Dustin's father visited his son's grave and shot himself in the heart. After her ex-husband's death, Dustin's mother, Mona, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Richters, blaming them for Dustin's death. Her lawyer found inconsistencies in Tracey's story. Tracey had said once that she knew Dustin was one of the attackers, then later said she didn't know who either of them were. She said at one point she fired from one position, then later said she fired from another. However, the lawsuit was dropped in 2005, just a few days before it was set to go to trial, apparently because investigators thought it could interfere with their case. On April 23, 2004, Michael Roberts filed for divorce from Tracey. Tracey requested temporary child support as well as an order of protection against Michael. After the divorce, Tracey tried to pin the shooting on Michael. She moved to Omaha for a fresh start and claimed Michael was still harassing her and her children even after the move. She also claimed he broke into her car in 2009 and left photos of Dustin's body inside. Michael has claimed Tracey was the one harassing him after the divorce. In Omaha, Tracey assumed a new identity, now going by the name Sophie Edwards, and she got all new documents to match: a new driver's license, social security number, and passport. Meanwhile, investigators were working hard to piece together just what had happened on the night of December 13th, 2001. At first, Bert said he thought his dad might have something to do with it because he hadn't called after the attack to see if he was okay. Investigators were also suspicious of Michael, thinking he might have convinced Dustin to kill Tracey so he could get her life insurance payout. Michael did fail a polygraph, though his business trip gave him a rock-solid alibi. Another source said his polygraph results were inconclusive. But even though they were looking at other suspects, investigators were suspicious of Tracey's story from the beginning. For starters, there was no evidence that there was ever a second intruder. They also thought Tracey's strangulation marks looked like simple friction marks from rubbing something across her skin. There were also inconsistencies in her story, more than just what was pointed out in the wrongful death suit. At one point, she told sheriff's deputies that both men had run away when she previously said only one of them had. She later said she made a mistake there. She'd also given police a description of the second man's face, but earlier had told them he was wearing a ski mask. A friend of Tracey's, Mary Higgins, claimed she didn't think Tracey would have had enough room to turn and fire like she said she did from the tiny space between the bed and the wall. There is one other thing I found interesting. In most accounts, Tracey said she was strangled with pantyhose, but at one point she also said her hands were bound with pantyhose. These could both be true at once. These things could have been done at different points or using different pairs of pantyhose, but I did think it was a bit strange. And then there was the matter of Dustin. After the attack, people were shocked that someone like Dustin would commit a crime like this. A pink spiral notebook was found in Dustin's car that supposedly belonged to him. The writing inside was in his handwriting and claimed John Pittman had hired him to kill Tracey and Bert and make Tracey's death look like a suicide. But investigators didn't think this notebook was really his. Dustin didn't keep a diary, didn't even like to write, and had never even met Tracey's first husband. There was also information in the diary about John that Dustin couldn't have known. Investigators began to think Tracey had coerced Dustin into writing it to incriminate him further, maybe in the few days before he died. Also found in Dustin's car was an old computer that his mother, Mona, didn't think he would be interested in. And why, she asked, would he go back into the house after taking it and putting it in his car? Mona also claimed Dustin held his relationship with the Robertses in high regard, since he didn't have many friends and had never been good at making them, so he would want to hold on to the ones he did have. Tracey had some claims of her own. She says Mona once told her she was afraid to leave Dustin alone with her other children because she was afraid he might physically hurt them. Mona said she was never worried about leaving Dustin alone with his sisters, she just didn't like doing it. Dustin was difficult, she said, but he was never violent. More and more, the supposed home invasion was beginning to look like murder, but there still wasn't enough evidence for an arrest. The case went cold until around 2009, when it was revisited by the new Sac County prosecutor, Ben Smith. Ben Smith knew right away that this case was suspicious. Remember, Tracey claimed her glasses had been knocked off in the attack, and she couldn't see as well as she normally could, yet she shot at Dustin with near-perfect accuracy. Ben Smith theorized that Tracey wanted to kill Dustin to implicate her ex-husband John in her attempted murder and gain the upper hand in their custody battle. Investigators wanted to prove Tracey knew about the notebook found in Dustin's car. It had never been revealed to the public, so if she knew about it, there was a good chance she'd coerced him to write it, as they'd initially suspected. When they found out her friend Mary Higgins knew about the notebook, they knew Tracey had to be guilty. In 2011, 45-year-old Tracey Richter was arrested at a mall in Omaha and charged with first-degree murder. She faced life in prison. She was extradited back to Iowa to stand trial. After her arrest, Michael, who was remarried and living in California, got custody of the 2 children they had together. Interestingly, even John Pittman was shocked at his ex-wife's arrest. He just assumed it was a home invasion and Dustin had been killed in self-defense. Tracey's trial began in October of that year. The prosecution claimed Dustin was killed in an attempt to frame both he and John Pittman for Tracey's attempted murder so she could gain the upper hand in her custody battle with John. An expert witness testified that the last 3 shots fired through Dustin's head were fired when he was already face down on the ground. The defense claimed Tracey's original story was true. There was a home invasion and Dustin had been killed in self-defense. A now 21-year-old Bert took the stand in his mom's defense, said the home invasion was real, and credited Tracey with saving his life. The defense also said the second intruder might have been a man Mona had been having an affair with at the time, who broke up with her and abruptly left town just a few days after the attack. Tracey didn't take the stand, but said in an interview that she had no need to manipulate the custody battle in her favor because she never doubted she was going to lose custody anyway. There is one other thing I thought was worth noting. In the trial, the judge barred a psychologist from testifying to say that Tracey had acute stress syndrome and that her actions were consistent with someone who had been in a home invasion. This was done because the psychologist's testimony would have crossed the line into the realm of bolstering Richter's credibility. On November 7, 2011, Tracey Richter was found guilty of the murder of Dustin Wehde. She was later sentenced to life in prison, where she remains today. In later interviews, jury members claimed they wanted to believe her story but just couldn't. They also didn't believe Burt, saying he sounded like he had been coached. As juror Paulette Sopland put it, "I guess one thing that stuck in my head was that she took one of the guns that still had bullets in it. She took it downstairs and unloaded it on the counter. Well, if you're protecting your children, you wouldn't unload a gun. You keep it loaded." After the trial, there was some talk of charging Burt with perjury, but I don't think anything ever came out of that. In a bizarre, tragic coincidence, Tracey's father was found dead the day after her conviction. His body was found in his home, and he was thought to have been dead between 24 and 36 hours by that time. His death was thought to be natural. An autopsy was scheduled, but I could never find results. The day after her father's body was found, Tracey and her lawyers filed an appeal, but not for her murder conviction. When she moved to Omaha and assumed a new identity, she'd done so illegally, filing for new documents under the name Sophie Edwards and claiming she'd had it legally changed when she hadn't. When you sign for documents like this, you have to sign that you know, under the penalty of perjury, that the information in the documents is true. Because of this, Tracey had been convicted of perjury, and that's what this appeal was for. However, the appeal was denied because she had filed it too late after the conviction. So far, at least 2 appeals she's filed for her murder conviction have also been denied. In 2012, Tracey wrote to a child sex offender named James Landa to try and find a witness for her defense. James Landa was in jail in Wisconsin, but had heard about Tracey's case from a local Iowa newspaper and supported her. Her letter to him contained personal information about not only her children, but about Michael Roberts. That same year, Michael tried to get new passports for his and Tracey's 2 children. Their kids had dual Australia-US citizenship and Australian passports, but the passports had expired. His request for new passports was rejected. Technically, he still had joint custody with Tracey, who hadn't consented to the kids traveling out of the country. I believe he was eventually able to get permission to go back to Australia with his kids, or perhaps did so illegally. I don't really know. Later that year, a search of Tracey's hard drive proved she really had tried to kill him at least once back in 2004. After Michael got custody of their kids, Tracey owed him child support. In 2014, those child support payments, which amounted to over $200,000 at this point, were changed to be restitution payments for Dustin Wehde's family. Tracey supposedly didn't need the money because she was in jail, but I did find one article that said she would no longer be able to buy things like hygiene items or pay to use the phone. Later on that year, allegations came out that Tracey and her mom were harassing people who had testified for the prosecution in her trial. Tracey's mom's house was searched. She denied any wrongdoing and accused investigators of corruption. Even during their custody battle, John claimed he would see flyers on cars that said he was a child molester. Now it seemed those allegations were coming to the surface again, though there didn't seem to be any more evidence of them now than there was at the time. Several articles on a website called the Ripoff Report claimed prosecutor Ben Smith had a conflict of interest with one of the prosecution witnesses that he'd failed to disclose to the judge. He'd also allegedly become friends with Michael Roberts and even testified in some of the Roberts child support hearings on Michael's behalf. The website claimed Ben knew Michael was a child abuser, though there's also no evidence that he was. It also claimed 2 other witnesses lied on the stand and Ben Smith knew but didn't do anything. Other accusations against witnesses included things like murder, computer hacking, fraud, theft, perjury, and even terrorism. In 2015, Ben Smith was sued by the Ripoff Report. The lawsuit claimed Ben had falsely accused the owner of the site of criminal conduct and used various means to publicly disclose private information in an attempt to discredit him and his website. I have no idea how this lawsuit turned out. Even today, there are people who think Tracey is innocent, or at least that she didn't get a fair trial. Her son Bert still claims the home invasion was real and Dustin's shooting was in self-defense. He started a change.org petition around 2015, at least it appears to be started by him, but it only got 130 signatures. There's also a Facebook page that seems to be run by him. Another man in Tracey's corner is a journalist named Darren Meade, and another Facebook page, again seeming to be run by him. He claims prosecutor Ben Smith manufactured evidence and concealed and withheld exculpatory evidence in the Tracey Richter murder trial. I've already previously discussed a lot of these other accusations, and I don't know enough about them to say whether they're accurate. So that's all I have for you today on Tracey Richter. Most people I came across in my research seem to believe the prosecution's story and think Tracey is right where she belongs. But there are still more people in her corner than I expected. There are obviously still a lot of details here that we don't know, so I am really curious to hear what everyone else thinks. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.